Welcome to Module 1, Lesson 1, about choosing. As we begin, we are working on our short-term goal that we've discussed before, and that is to consciously apply small steps to create a mindset of personal growth. Welcome to Module 1, Lesson 1, about choosing. As we're just getting started, we're working on our short-term goal, our first goal, our short-term goal. As we're just getting started, we're working on our first goal, our short-term goal, to consciously apply small steps to create a mindset of personal growth. And that's important because very often we all feel like we're not operating at 100% of our abilities. And maybe you've said that to yourself. I'm not sure if I'm operating at 100% of my abilities. And we could unpack that statement a little bit, but I think that we would end up at the place where we question, why is it important for us to feel like we're operating at 100%? What is it that makes us believe that is the way that we as women and as caretakers are expected to be all of the time? And that leads me perfectly into growth killer number 1, and that is a fixed mindset. Carol Dweck wrote a wonderful book where she spoke about the importance of a growth mindset. And she teaches a lot about the applications of that in classroom settings for children. And I've linked a wonderful video in the resources below. But it's also important for us as adults. Indeed, it's important for anyone trying to make change, particularly when you have failed in making those changes before. And there are a lot of ways that we can get stuck when it comes to making change, but certainly having a fixed mindset is at the top of that list. We always feel like we need to get it right. What is it about us as women that we expect perfection from ourselves? And I challenge that. In the art of personal science, we leave plenty of room for making mistakes, for backsliding. As long as you keep it moving, as long as you keep going forward, there is room for you to mess up. And it's important, really important, to keep a sense of humor about yourself through this process. Don't take yourself so seriously. Learn to laugh, chuckle at yourself. I'm going to talk a little bit about the woman who taught me yoga through this lesson. And the first story I'll share with you is when she was talking to us about being aware of our ego, of that part of us that is always giving commentary about the world around us and the way that we act in it. And that's that voice that's in our heads that's always got something to say about everything, right? And as she would go through it's important to keep a sense of humor about yourself for a lot of reasons. At the top of that list is we are always commenting on everything around us. There is a voice in our head that has always got something to say about everything. And when you can recognize that voice and not take it seriously, it becomes sort of a game. You can laugh at it. You can look at yourself and look at your behavior and look at your thoughts and the way that you're thinking about things and point and laugh at yourself and, oh, look at me go. Look at me go. It's so funny when I do that. That is so funny. And that has wonderful repercussions in our relationships with other people as well. When they see that we don't take ourselves so seriously, it puts other people at ease around us. I'm sure you can think of at least one person in your life that took themselves so seriously. You couldn't pick on them, you couldn't criticize them, you couldn't question them or challenge them. And as soon as you did, their defenses went up and they shut down. It's difficult to be yourself around that person. It's difficult to make yourself vulnerable to that person and build a strong relationship with them because they don't have a sense of humor about themselves. They're so serious. Think about that and think about what that looks like in your relationship with yourself. So I encourage you, please keep a sense of humor. It's particularly important as we go through the process of the art of personal science and we start unlearning some habits and learning a bunch of new habits. You're going to have to laugh at yourself. The second is to stay open to possibility. In a fixed mindset, we tend to use words such as always or never. And if you've ever been in counseling of any kind, as I have, that's one of the first things that the counselor will tell you is, particularly when you're arguing with other people, you don't use those words like always and never. They're rarely true. They're rarely true, and you know it. If you catch yourself using an absolute, and you can pause for just a second and really think about what that means, you will have to admit to yourself that is probably an extreme statement that doesn't hold any water. Not only that, but when you use words like always and never, you close yourself off to possibility. You don't keep any room open for growth and miracles and fresh air. So stay open to possibility. The third is trust the ripple effect. In a growth mindset, we want to trust that other people can change. As we change, as we are able to change, certainly other people are able to change as well, even if they seem resistant to it at first. We're going to talk a lot about how to be that change maker in your family and close relationships. But now, in the meantime, just suffice to say that if you can change, so can your loved ones. And that is the ripple effect. There are a lot of positive externalities, if I can talk economics with you for just a moment. And those are the unintended positive consequences of an action. Trust. Trust that as you get better, people see you do that, and you unconsciously give them permission to also do better. There's a great poem about that, and I'll put that in the resources for you as well. The fourth thing to keep in mind, the fourth way to bust a fixed mindset is to reward progress and learning. Outcomes are important, and we do look at outcomes a lot in the art of personal science. We are here to get results, but you won't always get it right. We are not perfect. And it's important to recognize and reward and be grateful for the progress and learning that happens along the way. The second growth killer when it comes to making good choices is simply mischoosing. The second growth killer is mischoosing. And there are a lot of things to think about when it comes to how we choose. The first is we make thousands of decisions a day. Literally, thousands of decisions a day have to be made from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. And that can lead to decision fatigue. At the end of the day, you can easily feel yourself physically tired if you've done a lot that day, but being fatigued mentally is that feeling of, I can't make another decision. You tell me what you want for dinner. I'll screw it. We'll just order a pizza. And that is when it becomes really important to simplify your choices as much as you can every day. Steve Jobs is notorious for wearing the same black turtleneck every day. Mark Zuckerberg wears the same t-shirt every day. Barack Obama sends one-word responses in his emails. These are highly successful, highly effective people who have found creative ways to simplify their choices. Simplify your decisions every day. And that is also important because we have thousands of options. If you go into any grocery store, maybe on the jam aisle or the olive oil aisle, or certainly the chip aisle, there are hundreds of options. Hundreds of options. How are you supposed to make healthy eating decisions when there is so much to think about? My answer to that is simplify your options. If you do a little pre-planning and you make some agreements and you take some responsibility for the choices that you're going to make, then it doesn't come down to hundreds of bags of chips. The simpler question is, what will I snack on? And from there, you only have two choices, maybe three, right? Fruit, vegetables. Simplifying your options is particularly important when it comes to eating. Rather than asking yourself, what do I want for breakfast? You can know exactly what you're going to have for breakfast because you've ritualized that meal and you have the same thing every day. And we're going to get there in a couple modules. Rather than, what do I want for dinner? It's, well, I've got turkey and I've got chicken in my freezer, so which one of those do I want? I've got green beans and broccoli in my crisper, which one of those do I want? And then the only thing you're left with is, do I want pasta or rice? Simplify your options. Simplify your choices. This is going to make the process much easier, and we're going to do that step by step as we go. Another thing that leads us to mischoosing is making too many comparisons. How many times have you sat down to watch a show and all you want to do is relax? Maybe you've got a glass of wine or a beer. The house is quiet. You've got 30 minutes or an hour. I'm going to sit down and watch a show. And you flip through the channels or flip through Netflix. And before you know it, 10, 15, 20 minutes has gone by, and now you've lost a huge chunk of your availability. When we make too many comparisons, no matter what we choose, we are going to always wonder if we made the right choice. You pick a show, well, that show sucked. Maybe I would have liked the other show better. Or maybe I'll watch this show, but maybe I won't like it and I'll watch this show. Too much comparison, too many decisions doesn't lead to more freedom. It leads to being paralyzed in the choice. It leads to frustration. We are going to practice making a choice, owning that choice, and not looking back. And speaking of owning your choices, be somebody. That's something that my husband and I heard on a movie once, and we say it to each other, and we say it to ourselves a lot. When I am struggling with a choice or struggling with the comparison of the choice that I made with another choice that I might have made, I say that to myself a lot. Be somebody. Pick a choice, own it, and go with it. Pick a choice, own it, and run with it. The woman who taught me yoga was this little, beautiful 60-year-old woman who teaches 5 yoga classes a week and runs 5 miles a day and only eats vegetables. But every day she has a little bit of Gatorade. And to hear her tell the story, she'll say, you know, if one day I wake up and I'm glowing in the dark, I made that decision because I loved Gatorade and I'm okay with it. And that's the kind of ownership that we're talking about. And if ever you feel like you don't have that confidence, you can borrow that saying from me. Be somebody. Say it to yourself. It's empowering. Or if you don't think it's empowering, find something else that fits. The third growth killer is a failure to practice. As I've said, in the Art of Personal Science, we focus a lot on building habits and new patterns and new routines, and that does not happen overnight. It is important that we have a healthy understanding and healthy expectations of practice. specifically very intentional practice, where we are talking about the quality of our practice, not only the quantity. We are focusing on the quality of our practice, how consistently and deliberately we can work to improve our performance over time. And it's the over time where we need to be careful about motivating ourselves consistently and carefully, because we want to maintain motivation, but we don't want to burn out. So motivation becomes the true constraint, the true limited resource here, because we want to ration it out in the way that is most effective. And I believe, as I hope you do by now, that those small 4% stretches, those small steps of a 4% stretch in challenge and ability are what is going to give us enough motivation to see progress, but not so much that we burn out. That 4% stretch is in challenge and ability, and those are continuously increased by learning new things. And that is the steady increase in knowledge that's important. In intentional practice, we also need immediate feedback. When I ask you to print a chart and fill in the bubble completely and write the date, that is your immediate feedback. The Facebook group, that is your immediate feedback. The live coaching calls, that is your immediate feedback. But you can get that in a myriad of other ways. If you have a close relationship, perhaps you're going through this process with a friend, or you're teaching your friend the process as you go through it, which is a particularly powerful way of learning. If you can take what you gain in these lessons and turn around and teach it to someone else, you're going to get immediate feedback from that person. And because you have had to now retrieve that information and share it with someone else, it's going to be locked in a very powerful way. So I highly encourage you to do that. And of course, the fourth step is what? To repeat. Repeat. Go back, find your motivation, find your 4% stretch, have faith in the process over time, and get feedback. Think about how you choose. This lesson is about choosing, about making choices and owning those choices. Ask yourself, what standards have you set, and how do they relate to your health? What standards have you set for your health? How do you judge yourself if you're not perfect in following your diet or lifestyle plans? That's the voice in your head. What is it saying to you? Are you agreeing with it? Or are you able to laugh at it? What advice would you give to a friend who had the same struggle? Where we tend to be harder on ourselves than we would ever be with another person that we love. Because we would encourage that person to not hold themselves to an impossible standard, and to take the lesson and laugh at it and reward yourself when you did something good. But we don't do that to ourselves. So again, choosing is a lot about the relationship that you have with yourself. How can you look at yourself more realistically with compassion and forgiveness, as if you were your own best friend? What would that be like? Our idea to remember is that optimal practice that's going to get us the results that we want is only a 4% stretch from your current level of ability and challenge. A growth mindset is important. Owning and restricting your choices are important. To get the outcomes that we want in the art of personal science requires practice that is intentional and gets us where we want to go. So remember, optimal practice is only a 4% stretch from your current level of ability and challenge. And don't worry, I'm going to steadily increase your ability and your level of being challenged through these lessons. And at the end of it, you will have enough practice practicing that you will be able to identify and organize that 4% stretch for yourself. Our next lesson, we're going to talk about excuses. That is our second conversation as we talk about choices. Excuses are choices that we make. Excuses are reasons we give ourselves for the choices that we make. We'll have that conversation. It'll be a good one. There's no homework for this lesson. Take some time to think about what we've covered, maybe rewatch it, talk about it with somebody, jump in the Facebook group, tell me what you think, ask me your questions. I'm here for you. I'll see you in the next lesson. God bless.